chapter 26, I'm going to talk about the mergers and acquisitions. And today, let me talk about the basic ideas, the key concepts regarding several terms. First, there is a term acquisition. And the acquisition is to gain control of another company. So acquisition is a much more broad term. So it can be applied whenever someone or some entity takes control of a company. When a mutual fund buys the shares of a company, it is an acquisition. When a very rich guy buys maybe 5% of the shares of Samsung Electronics, he is acquiring the Samsung Electronics shares. And particularly, we are talking about the transactions between a company and another company. So a company can acquire another company's shares. So this will be the acquisition. And more narrowly speaking, the acquisition is only talking about the acquiring the control, buying the shares, but not further. So when you talk about an acquisition in a narrow sense, it means that the target company will continue. So there will be the target company and there will be acquiring company together. But maybe in this relationship. So acquiring company by the target company's shares. So now it becomes the shareholders of the target company. So now they are in a group. So it's like Samsung Electronics having other Samsung companies' shares. They are in the same business group. So acquisition means this kind of status. On the other hand, the merger is the next step. Now, the two companies want to become one sole entity. And now it becomes a simple one company living together. So at the time, after the completion of the merger, now we only have one corporation. So the acquiring company and the target company becomes one. So they are combined by each other. So we can understand this process as the matter of the time or the procedure or the steps. So we have acquisition first, and then we have a merger. Or we can understand these terms as this relationship. So acquisition is a much more a broad term, and among the acquisitions we have some mergers. So acquisitions and mergers, in any case, they may come together. So that's why we often use the term M&A together to talk about this process. And more broadly speaking, this acquisition is also a subset of a larger activities called restructuring. So the restructuring has a negative feeling, or so when you hear about the restructuring, sometimes you feel some negative feelings. So they are connected to bad things, and this is natural because if your businesses are doing well, then you don't have any reason to restructure your company. However, because something is wrong, you are restructuring your business. So that's why restructuring is often related to the negative activities, and this means that they are going to improve the profitability or the sustainability of the company. And we also talked about takeovers, and they are approximately the synonym for the acquisition. So when I take over the company, it means I acquire the company. When someone take over your project, it means you are going to give the control over the project to that person. So the takeovers, acquisitions, they are approximately the same. Then if you had a chance to take a strategy class, they have several classifications for the acquisitions or the mergers. So they have a value chain. So we have raw materials, company A do some process, and we have some industrial goods, and company B make it into consumer goods. So this is more upstream and this is more downstream. So at the end, you get into your consumers, your customers. But in this process, there are many companies involved together. So they interact each other. So from the point of view of the company B, the supplier is company A. And from the point of view of the company A, the consumer or the customer is company B. So this flow of the products and the services, this is what we call as value chain, because during this process they make some value. So from consumers cannot consume the raw materials. So for example, you cannot eat crude oil or you cannot eat some iron. However, if these companies convert these raw materials into very useful products, now you can use it. And for this reason, you pay higher prices to their companies. So these are value added, which are added during this process. So that's why we call it value chain. And in this value chain, we have a horizontal integration, which means company A and C, they merge together. This is the horizontal integration. So it's basically M&A with your competitor. When you are on the same level in your value chain, if you acquire your competitor, it is said as the horizontal merger. But on the other hand, if company A acquire B or if company B acquire A, it is called vertical integration. So it is M&A with your consumer or your supplier. And finally, another term is diversification. So when someone do not find any relationship from a single value chain, and when company E in other value chain acquire company B, it is called diversification. So when you have no good reason from the perspective of the value chain, we often just make it window dressing and we say this is a diversification of their business. So they are going into the new value chain. So these terms help you understand the motives, the motivations, why these companies are doing this. Naturally, when you acquire competitors, it helps you to increase your market share. So you are going to be a dominant player in your market, or you can be a only company in the market. Then you can have some freedom to choose your choose your product price, because you are already a single and the most powerful company in that market. This is something like Apple's what they are doing in the smartphone industry, because they are dominant. Nobody says bad things about the Apple's high phone prices. So they are taking it, even though that the the price for the smartphone is very high, they are buying it. And the purpose of the vertical integration is to secure your value chain. So if from the perspective of the company B, there is a threat when the company A sells their products to their competitors D, and they do not sell it to them, then they cannot continue this. So therefore, they want to make it ours to secure the raw materials and industrial goods which are necessary for their production. Similarly, from the perspective of company A, they may be concerned that sometimes company B do not buy from them. Company B just buy from their competitors C, and company A will be in trouble. So to secure the value chain, they may want to be merged with the company B. So these are the vertical integrations. So these kinds of classifications help you to explain about the motivations of the M&As behind their actions, but I do not prefer to talk about them. I'm just presenting these terms for your understanding, but I think nowadays it is very difficult to say whether one M&A is horizontal or vertical one. So let me talk about the Disney and the Marvel Studio. So as you might already know, the Disney is a global leading entertainment company, and it acquired the Marvel Studio, which produces the comic books and have some characters about 5 or 7 years ago. And what are you going to say about the acquisition of the Marvel from the Disney? What can you tell about it based on what we have learned? 수영, 뭐라고 할 수 있어요? 디즈니의 마블 인수는 뭐라고 하면 좋을까요? 네. 수직. So she said vertical. Yes, and there are some aspects related to the vertical, because Disney is famous for the Disney World and also famous for the OTT, over the counter, over the television, the over the top industry, the Disney Plus. So by acquiring Marvel, so Marvel has some contents, and the contents will be on the Disney World, and the characters will be sold. The character related goods will be sold on the Disney World, and on the OTT, they are going to show it, stream it. So it can be said as a vertical integration. But at the same time, it is a horizontal integration, because Disney also makes some animation movies, right? Like Frozen or Moana. What is this? Or any other movies. They are actually the competition from in the industry of the content, right? So they also compete with the Marvel, and they are acquiring the competitors. So we cannot clearly distinguish between the horizontal integration and the vertical integration anymore, because nowadays the industry is too complicated to be classified simply. So I'm just introducing these terms because it may help you to explain when some real world happenings about the M&A. So when some companies acquire the other, you can explain the motivation behind this merger with using these terms, but I do not think that this is not that relevant anymore.